The text message came at 7:52 on a Thursday morning. I was sitting in my garage in Cookeville, Tennessee, drinking my second cup of coffee and pretending to organize the toolboxes I had reorganized twice that week already. Retirement had not been kind to idle hands. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I picked up on the third buzz. There was a pause before the voice came through. A voice I had not heard in nearly a decade, but one I would recognize anywhere, the way you recognize a song that hurt you once. Ray, it's Diane. Before you hang up, please listen. It's about our daughter. Our daughter. 2 words that hit me somewhere behind the sternum. I had not been allowed to use those words in 8 years. My name is Raymond Calloway. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a firefighter in Nashville, retired early after a back injury on a warehouse call, and moved 2 hours east to Cookeville, where I grew up. I have a garage, a half-acre of grass that takes me an hour to mow, and a border collie named Earl who herds me from room to room like I might wander off. That is my life now. Before that, I had more. A house in Brentwood, a daughter named Lily, a wife named Diane who decided, when Lily was 7 years old, that she deserved a bigger life than I could give her. The divorce was not the worst part. People divorce. I understood that, even if it broke me. The worst part came after. Diane had remarried within 14 months. A man named Preston, who sold commercial real estate and wore shirts that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He was good-looking and successful and present in ways I had never been because I worked 24-hour shifts and smelled like smoke most days. I did not blame my daughter for liking him. She was 8 years old. She did not know how to choose between people yet. But Diane knew how to choose for her. The visitation schedule the court gave me was every other weekend. I showed up for every single one. At first, Diane would have Lily ready at the door. Polite in the cold way you are polite to someone you have already decided to forget. Then the reasons started. Lily has a cold. Lily has a birthday party. Lily has a school project due Monday. The reasons came more often than the visits, and when I tried to push back through the court, Diane's lawyer pointed out that I had missed 4 scheduled visits in the past year. I had not missed them willingly. I had showed up and been turned away. But I had not documented it, had not called police, had not done the things a man with a better lawyer would have known to do. The judge gave Diane a warning. She thanked him and kept doing exactly what she was doing. The last time I saw Lily in person, she was 12. We ate lunch at a Cracker Barrel off the interstate. She was quiet the whole meal, looking at her phone more than at me. When I tried to talk to her about school, about her friends, about anything, she answered in 2 or 3 words. Before I pulled back into Diane's driveway, she said goodbye like I was a cashier at a store she would not be visiting again. 2 weeks later, Diane filed a motion to terminate my visitation based on emotional unavailability and the child's expressed preference not to see me. The judge granted a temporary suspension pending review. The review never seemed to happen in any way that helped me. By the time Lily turned 15, Preston had legally adopted her. I was not even notified until after it was done. I moved to Cookeville the following spring. Not because I gave up on my daughter. I want to be clear about that. I never gave up, but I could not stay in Nashville and drive past her school and her soccer fields and the park where I used to push her on the swings. Some distances protect you. I sent birthday cards every year. I do not know if she got them. So when Diane's voice came through my phone that Thursday morning, 8 years after I had last spoken to her and nearly as long since I had heard my daughter's voice, I sat down on the concrete floor of my garage and I listened. Lily had been sick for 2 years. Diane explained it in the flat, efficient way of someone who had been repeating medical information for so long it had stopped feeling real. A rare autoimmune condition that had slowly destroyed one kidney and was now threatening the other. She needed a transplant. She had been on the National Registry for 11 months. No match yet. The doctors wanted to test immediate family members. Preston had been tested. Not compatible. Diane's sister. Tested. Not compatible. Diane herself. Too close a blood type mismatch. They needed me tested. She said it simply, without apology, the way you ask someone to hand you something across a table. I know I don't have any right to ask you this, she said. No, I said. You don't. A long silence. But she's your daughter, Ray. I drove to Nashville the next morning. Diane had arranged everything. The hospital, the appointment, the paperwork. I went alone. I did not tell anyone where I was going because I did not have anyone close enough to tell. Earl watched me back out of the driveway with his usual accusatory stare. Vanderbilt University Medical Center was enormous in the way all major hospital complexes are enormous, built up over decades until the whole thing becomes a small city with its own logic. A woman at the nephrology desk had my name on a list and walked me back through a corridor I would not have found on my own. In the elevator, Diane was waiting. She looked different. Older, obviously, but something beyond that. The certainty that had defined her during our marriage and our divorce was gone. She was a woman who had been frightened for a long time and was no longer trying to hide it. Thank you for coming, she said. I'm not here for you. She nodded like she had expected that. We did not speak again until the elevator opened on the 4th floor. She told me Lily knew I was coming. She told me Lily wanted to see me after the testing, if I was willing. She told me Preston was at the office and would not be here today. I did not react to any of it. I followed her to the lab and I sat in the chair and I let them take my blood and swab my cheek and fill out 3 pages of family medical history. The nurse who processed everything was kind and professional and did not ask me any questions that I could not answer. I should have been able to answer all of them. The preliminary compatibility results would take a few hours. Diane had arranged a small conference room on the same floor where we could wait. She brought coffee from a cart in the hallway. I accepted it without thanking her. We sat on opposite sides of a table that was meant for meetings much more official than ours. After 20 minutes of silence, I asked how Lily was doing. Not medically. Diane had already covered the medical. How was she doing? Diane looked at the table. She's scared. She's been trying not to show it, but she's scared. She paused. She asked about you. A few months ago. She found an old picture. From when she was little. She asked me if you were still in Cookville. What did you tell her? The truth. That I thought so. That I didn't know. You could have called before this. She did not argue with that. That silence was its own kind of answer. The nurse came back faster than I expected, less than 90 minutes. She asked me to come with her to a different room, not the conference room, smaller, more private. Diane stood to follow, and the nurse hesitated in a way that made us both notice. Both of you, the nurse said, carefully. The doctor would like to speak with both of you. The doctor's name was Dr. Anita Vasquez, head of Transplant nephrology. She was around 50. With reading glasses, she kept taking on and off, and she had a colleague with her, a younger doctor she introduced as Dr. Everett Cohn from the genetics department. Genetics. I looked at Diane. She was already looking at the door like she was calculating the distance. Mr. Calloway, Dr. Vasquez began. We ran your compatibility panel as a standard pre-screening. During that process, the lab also ran a paternity confirmation. It's routine when we're testing family members for organ donation to ensure accuracy in the compatibility modeling. Okay, I said. The results were unexpected. She took off her glasses. Mr. Calloway, the panel shows no biological relationship between you and Lily. The words did not land immediately. They sat in the air of that small room, and I waited for them to make sense. That's not possible, I said. I was there when she was born. I understand. We ran the panel twice before bringing you in. The results are consistent. She looked at me steadily. You are not Lily's biological father. Diane said nothing. She was sitting absolutely still in a way that was not the stillness of shock. It was the stillness of someone who had been waiting for a particular moment and had now arrived at it. Diane. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Look at me. She looked at the wall above my head. How long have you known? Nothing. How long? Dr. Cohn spoke quietly. Mr. Calloway, I know this is a great deal to process. If you need a moment, I need her to answer me." Diane closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was looking at her hands. "I wasn't sure," she said. "I always told myself I wasn't sure. But you suspected." The silence was its own answer again. That was the thing about Diane. She communicated most clearly when she said nothing at all. I stood up, the chair scraped back and docked her. Vasquez reached toward me in a careful, professional way that meant she had done this before, delivered news that broke the architecture of someone's life, and she had learned the small gestures that keep people in the room. "Mr. Calloway, there is still the matter of your daughter. She's not my daughter. That's what you just told me, biologically. But Lily doesn't know any of this yet, and she needs a transplant." Dr. Vasquez was very calm. "We still need to find her a donor, and for that we need to know who her biological father is." I turned to Diane. "Who is he?" She was crying now, quietly, without drama, the way someone cries when they have been carrying something heavy for a very long time and have finally been allowed to set it down. "His name is Gary." "Gary who?" She pressed her lips together. "Gary Calloway." The room went completely silent. "I have a brother. Had a brother. Gary is still alive, so I suppose I should say have. He is 2 years younger than me, lives in Memphis, works for a freight company. We used to be close, the way brothers who grew up poor in a small Tennessee town are close, bound together by the same memories and the same scrapes and the same basic understanding of where we came from. After my marriage to Diane, we drifted. Different cities, different lives. I blamed the distance and the busy years. It never occurred to me to blame anything else. They had met at my wedding. That detail came out later, not that day in the hospital room, but later, when everything unraveled completely. Diane and Gary had met at my own wedding, at the reception, when I was too busy being a groom to notice. What came after, she said, was not a long affair. It was not a relationship. It was a few months, she said, when our marriage was new and already struggling, when I was working too much and Gary was around more than he should have been. And then she was pregnant, and she did not know whose it was, and she chose to believe it was mine. Or she chose to let me believe it was mine. There is a difference, and I have spent a long time deciding which one is true. I walked out of that conference room and down the hall and into the stairwell, and I sat on the top step, and I put my face in my hands, and I sat there for a long time. 23 years. 23 years of knowing Lily as my daughter. 7 years of being her father before the divorce, and then 16 more years of fighting to stay connected to her, even when Diane made it nearly impossible, even when the court stripped my visitation and Preston took my place. 23 years of holding on to the idea of her because she was mine, and I loved her, and that love had never stopped, not once, not even in the worst of it. And now I was being told it was built on something that had never been real. Except that was the part I kept coming back to, sitting in that hospital stairwell with the fluorescent hum overhead. The love had been real. Every birthday card, every time I drove to Nashville and sat outside the school hoping to catch a glimpse of her before someone called the police on the strange man in the truck, every single morning I woke up in Cookville knowing my daughter was out there and couldn't call me. All of it had been real. Biology had not created any of that. Gary had not been there for any of it. Preston had been there for the middle years, the school plays and the soccer games and the dinners around the table, and I did not begrudge him the time I had been kept from. But I had been her father first. I had brought her home from the hospital. I had been the one who walked the floor with her at 3 a.m. when she had ear infections and Diane was exhausted. I had been the one who taught her to ride her bike in the driveway of the house on Brentwood Drive, running alongside her with my hand on the seat until she told me to let go, and I did, and she rode 30 feet before she realized I wasn't holding on anymore, and she turned around with the biggest grin I have ever seen on a human face. Biology did not give her that grin. I did. I went back in. I found Diane in the conference room alone. She looked like she expected me to leave without speaking to her, and was surprised when I sat back down. "You need to call Gary," I said. She blinked. "He is the biological father. If he's a match, he might be able to save her." So you are going to call him today, and you are going to tell him everything, and he is going to come here and get tested. I looked at her steadily. And then you are going to tell Lily the truth, all of it, before she hears it from somewhere else. Ray, she is so sick right now, the timing. She is a grown woman. Lily was 26. She had been 26 for 3 months. She deserves the truth. You have owed her that truth her whole life, and you are not going to keep owing it to her. Diane looked at the table for a long time. Then she nodded. And one more thing, I said. I want to see her, today, before I leave. Diane looked up. You brought me here, I said. You called me. You put my name on that form as a potential donor. After 16 years of cutting me out of her life, you called me when you needed something. That tells me, somewhere in all of this, you know I am still her father. So I am going to walk down that hall and I am going to see my daughter, and you are not going to stop me. Do we understand each other? She said yes, quietly, without argument. The first time in 20 years Diane had agreed to something I asked without a fight. Lily's room was at the end of the hall. Diane walked me to the door and then stepped back and let me go in alone. She was smaller than I remembered. Not physically smaller, she was a tall young woman, but diminished in the way illness diminishes people, pulled inward. She had a blanket over her legs and a tube in her arm, and she was watching something on a laptop balanced on the tray table. She looked up when the door opened. She stared at me for a moment like she was running a calculation. Hi, I said. Not the most brilliant opening, but it was what came out. Hi, she said. I stood in the doorway. I did not know if I should come closer. Did not know what the rules were for a moment like this one. A reunion between a father and daughter in a hospital room after 16 years of silence manufactured by someone else. You look like your grandfather, she said finally. My grandfather. You look like the picture of him. I get that, I said. He was a handsome man. Something happened at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. I came in and sat in the chair beside her bed and we talked for 2 hours. I do not know how to describe that conversation except to say that it was the most important 2 hours of my life and also the most ordinary. She told me about her job, marketing for a Nashville nonprofit. She told me about her apartment, the neighborhood, the cat she had named after a character from a book I had never read. I told her about Cookville, about the garage, about Earl herding me around the house. She laughed at that, a real laugh, not a polite one. At one point she said, Mom told me you tried to see me when I was a kid, that you showed up and she turned you away. Yes, I didn't know that until a few years ago. She told me when I was 22. I think she felt guilty. She looked at her hands. I was pretty angry. You don't have to explain anything to me. I know, but I want to. She looked up. I always wondered why you gave up so easily. Everyone around me kept telling me you had, and I tried to believe it, but something about it never sat right. Even as a kid, it just didn't add up with how I remembered you. I did not trust myself to speak for a moment. You remembered me? I'm not 7 anymore, she said quietly. I remember everything. Gary drove up from Memphis 3 days later. I was not at the hospital when he arrived. I had gone back to Cookville in between. I did not know how to sit in a waiting room with my brother, and I was honest enough with myself to acknowledge that I needed some distance from him before I could be in the same room without making a scene that would not help Lily. Diane called me when the results came back. He was a match. Not perfect, but viable. The transplant team said it was strong enough to proceed. She said it like she was reading from a document. Compatible. Viable. Proceed. She did not say anything about Gary, what he had said when she called him, what he had felt when she told him about Lily, whether he had known or suspected. I did not ask. That conversation was coming, but not yet. I drove back to Nashville. I sat in the hospital cafeteria, drinking bad coffee when I felt someone standing at the edge of my table. I looked up, expecting Diane. It was Lily. She had unhooked her IV stand and rolled it with her, wearing a hospital gown and a flannel overshirt that was several sizes too large, her hair pulled up. She looked exhausted and she looked determined, which I recognized as a family trait, though at that moment it was a complicated thing to feel. "They found a donor," she said. I heard. "I'm glad." She sat down across from me without being invited, which was also a family trait. About what it showed, I held the coffee cup and said nothing. She told me about Gary. Her voice was steady, but I could hear what the steadiness was costing her. She told me she suspected. For a long time. A pause. "Did you know?" "No. I found out when you did." She nodded slowly. She was doing the same thing I had done in that stairwell. I could see it, running the calculation of what this changed and what it did not. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what the word means. Father, have you come to any conclusions?" She looked at me with an expression I had not seen in 20 years, but recognized immediately. The same expression she had when she was 4 years old and working through a problem she was not yet sure how to solve. Eyes slightly narrowed, completely focused. "You were there when I was born," she said. "You stayed up with me when I had fevers. You taught me to ride my bike. I remember that. I remember your hands on the seat and then letting go. And I remember turning around and you were standing there 20 feet back, and you looked so proud you were about to come apart at the seams." She paused. "Gary drove up from Memphis when a doctor called him. That's what he's done. He's here for 1 week. He will donate something and then he'll go back to Memphis, and we will probably exchange awkward emails twice a year for a while and then stop." I said nothing. "Those are not the same thing," she said. "I just want to be clear that those are not the same thing." I had to look away. The cafeteria was half full of tired people eating bad sandwiches, and I stared at all of them until I had control of my face again. "There's something else," she said. "I talked to a lawyer. A friend of mine from college. She's in family law now." Lily folded her hands on the table. "What Mom did. The paternity fraud. The alienation. Cutting off your visitation. Blocking your letters. She said there are real legal remedies. She said I could testify about what I know, about what Mom told me she did deliberately. Lily, I'm not asking permission." Her voice was quiet, but there was iron in it. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do. She took 16 years from both of us. She took you away from me and she took me away from you, and she has never once answered for that. She cried in the doctor's office, and I'm sure some of it was real, but crying is not the same as consequences." She looked at me steadily. "I want there to be consequences." The transplant surgery happened on a Tuesday, 12 days after Diane's first phone call. Gary donated. The surgery lasted 4 hours. The transplant team was cautiously optimistic within the first 48 hours, and by the end of the first week, the new kidney was functioning at a level that made the doctors genuinely pleased, the kind of pleased that comes from a good outcome rather than professional politeness. I was in the waiting room for all of it. Gary and I spoke once, a brief, terrible conversation in the hospital parking structure. He looked like me enough that it had never struck me as significant, the kind of family resemblance you stop noticing. He did not offer excuses. I give him that. He said he had suspected, and he had chosen not to pursue it, and he had told himself it was the better choice for everyone. He said he was sorry. I told him I needed time. He said he understood. We did not hug. We did not make plans. He went back to Memphis. Maybe someday that conversation will continue. I do not know yet. Diane and I spoke twice during the recovery period. The first time was practical, about Lily's care and what the next few months would look like. The second time was different. She asked me, in the parking lot after a late visit, if I was going to pursue legal action. I told her I was going to follow my daughter's lead. She looked like she expected more, and I had nothing more to give her. The legal process took 7 months. Lily's lawyer, her college friend who turned out to be sharp and thorough, filed a civil claim for paternity fraud, parental alienation, and financial damages representing the years of child support I had paid for a child who had been deliberately kept from me. Diane's lawyer negotiated. Preston, to his credit, was not involved and made no attempt to defend what Diane had done. He and Diane divorced about 4 months after the transplant, something I heard secondhand and did not know how to feel about. The settlement was not everything. It never is. But it was something. A formal acknowledgement, in legal documents that will exist as long as legal documents exist, that what was done to me was wrong. That the years taken from me and from my daughter were taken deliberately. That the man who showed up every single time, who drove to Nashville and sat outside the school in his truck and sent birthday cards into what felt like a void, had been a real father who had been systematically prevented from being present by someone who had no legal or moral right to make that choice. Lily signed a statement. She did not have to. She did it anyway. The money is sitting in an account. I have not decided what to do with it yet. It does not feel like mine to spend on myself. I have thought about using some of it on the cabin. Lily and I have talked about something in the mountains outside of Gatlinburg, where she could come to recover, and we could sit on a porch and figure out what the next 20 years look like. She is doing well. The kidney is functioning. The autoimmune condition is being managed with medication that seems to be working. She goes back for checkups every 6 weeks, and I go with her when she will let me, which is most of the time now. She calls me on Sundays. Not every Sunday, but most of them. We talk about her week and my week and Earl's ongoing efforts to herd me into the kitchen at dinner time regardless of what I am doing. She is thinking about getting a dog. I have opinions about this. Last month she drove to Cookville for the weekend. First time she had been there. We ate at the diner on Main Street where I have eaten approximately 600 breakfasts since moving here, and the woman at the counter recognized me and asked who my guest was, and I said, "This is my daughter," and the words came out so naturally, so completely without effort, that Lily looked at me afterward in the parking lot and said quietly, "I've been waiting my whole life to hear you say that." I told her I had been waiting my whole life to say it where she could hear me. She has not called Gary. I do not know if she will. That is her decision entirely, and I will support it either way. She has 2 uncles on my side of the family, and they have been more present in the last 8 months than they were in the previous decade, drawn back in by the news of what happened the way families sometimes are, by the reminder that time is not infinite and the people you love are not guaranteed. My back still gives me trouble. Earl still herds me. The toolboxes in the garage are still better organized than they need to be. But on Sunday afternoons I sit on the porch with my phone and I wait for it to ring, and it rings, and I hear my daughter's voice, and the accumulated weight of everything that was taken from us sits a little lighter every time. I do not know what makes a father. I have turned that question over in my mind for 63 years, and I still do not have a clean answer. I know what it is not. It is not a DNA panel. It is not a last name on a birth certificate or a result in a lab. It is not 1 week in a hospital and a biological donation and a flight back to Memphis. What I know is this. When that phone buzzed in my garage at 7:52 on a Thursday morning, I did not know any of what was coming. I did not know about the test results, or my brother, or the 16 years of lies that were about to surface. I picked up the phone because someone told me my daughter was in trouble, and I was on the road to Nashville before I had finished my coffee. That is the only definition I have ever needed. If you have a parent who showed up for you in the ways that mattered, or if you are a parent who has been kept from your children and you are wondering if the fight is still worth it, I want you to hear this. It is. It always is, okay? They remember. Even when it seems like they do not. Even when years pass and the silence stretches so long you start to mistake it for an answer, they remember. Tell me your story. What does showing up mean to you? Hit the like button if this reached you somewhere. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to Pal Saga for more stories like this one. New ones every week. Real people, impossible situations, and the part of us that refuses to quit. I will see you in the next one.